We've heard so far this morning about different ways of dealing with systemic or systematic disturbances and ways social change, ways of responding in positive rather than negative fashions. We've heard from Jared Diamond about analyzing the way societies and individuals and families and cultures respond. We've heard from Gao Xiqing with his ideas about the possibilities for reform, both in the United States and China and the world financial system. We've just heard from Jennifer Corriero about using web tools to mobilize the great energy of youth around the world. We're going to hear now about another way of thinking about and dealing with questions of change and wealth and poverty and development and wealth creation. We're going to hear about it from two people who basically need no introduction, so I'll just give you their names. I'd like you to join me in welcoming Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google, who will be in discussion with Carlos Slim of Telmex in Mexico. Eric Schmidt and Carlos Slim.
Go ahead. Well, first, on behalf of Google, thank you all for joining us for today, last night, today, tonight, and tomorrow. It's going to be a great conference, and it's made special because of all of you here. I want to welcome Carlos Slim, my friend, who many people in the United States don't know. And what's interesting about Carlos is that we know him because of the success of Telmex. We know because of the movement of telecommunications and technology that he's driving in Latin America, but we don't know much else about what has driven his passion and his ideas. And I'd like to ask you a little bit about that. Before we do that, can you tell us a little bit about your company, Telmex? Just introduce the company. What does it do?
Yeah. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for your invitation. When I was in high school, I read a book called Mathematics and Imagination, and I looked what was Google. But we say Gogol. And I was thinking, what happened with Gogolplex? And now I know you have a Plaza Gogolplex. Congratulations for what you have done, and thank you for the invitation. Telmex is a traditional incumbent company that used to be in Mexico and was privatized at the end of 1990. And we make a group together with SBC, today AT&T. SBC was at Western Bell, that after that they both they merged with the 6 or 7 strong companies to make a US national, and France Telecom. Southwestern Bell has 10% of the company, France Telecom 5.1, and the Mexican group used to have 10.4, from which we have a little more than 3%, and through a holding 5%. This company moved like all these incumbents in our countries that have still electromechanical equipment, switches, to a very modern company. We invest more in Mexico, more than $30 billion just in landline. But from there were a second in the market company in mobile, in cellular service, that called Telcel. And we begin to grow, mostly making them compete. Actually, Telmex is the smallest company. The big company is America Mobile. We are in all Latin America. We have more than 170 million customers. We grow more than 65% for 17 years. Every year, 65%.
Wow.
The first year, 67. And 67 compound in 16 years. And we have service every place. A ver si ponen la gráfica, ¿no? We have grown strongly in many countries. We have pushed the prepaid. We believe that we developed the concept of prepaid. Mm-hmm. We call it 95 or something like that in our crisis, the Gillette plan, to subsidize the handsets to sell shapes, to sell cars. I prepared this information. We can see how the penetration of mobile telephony has been in our countries. We have now many countries with more penetration in Latin America than US. That's mostly Argentina and Chile and Venezuela. The average we have is 72% against 61 of Canada. That's a more penetration than Canada. But what's interesting also in comparison with China, China has grown in these 5 years and 1 quarter 169%, and in Latin America we have grown 227.7%. And it's interesting to make clear that still Latin America has a bigger gross national product, gross domestic product that China. And well, that's one point. That's the mobile that we are very glad what we have done. We are near all the countries in Latin America with a few exceptions. And the penetration, like I am telling, is now will be 3 of every 4 people will have a mobile. And now we are going to 3 generation, 3G, and we are looking now how to take in our countries the digital culture. Mm-hmm. Instead of talking about alphabetization, talk about digital culture. And we have worked with MIT and with Negroponte sometime, and working by our side. And we are pushing it by many ways with multiple platforms, looking to have a convergence and broadband in our countries as soon as possible, not only for entertainment, but also for health, education, and etc. We are pushing that, and that's we have now from Telmex 3 companies. One is Telmex, that is Mexico. One is America Mobile, that is a big company with this mobile growing. And now we are developing a international Telmex International, working already in Brazil, Argentina, Ecuador, Peru, Colombia, and other countries.
So you have a reputation and a history for being an engineer and being very good with numbers. And one of your hobbies, as I know, is baseball statistics, and you keep it all in your head. But you have a strong view of how society will change. You believe in a new society, not an old society. Can you describe that for people? What is the society going to look like over the next few years?
Well, what is clear is that advances in technology, some advances in productivity. But also it's clear that when technology change many of the sectors of the society, you have a revolution, a society revolution. You have a new kind of era, a new civilization. I think in great numbers we have four civilizations, 4 kinds of society. Nomadism with the hunting and recollection, the agricultural society, the industrial society. I think 2 steps of industrial society. First with the steam engine. With the steam engine, they came the railways and the steamboats, but also the production, industrial production, mining production, with agricultural production with the steam engine. And then in the 20th century, with the electricity and the internal combustion, you have the modern society. And that moved everything. They changed everything. But in the last years, the last maybe 40 or 50 after the Second War, the technology were advancing so much and the productivity was so high that now we are getting a society of services. If you look in US, maybe 85% of the people employed is in services, including the construction services. And what should be look is that the paradigms of the old societies are very different of the new society. In the agricultural society, you need slaves, you need workforce, social immobility, ignorance, and the power were monolithic. You have the same person where the emperador, the pharaoh, the king, the Tlatoani in America, the Inca in Peru, that was with the political power, but also came from divinity to have the religious. He was coming from divinity, no? And they have also the military power and the economic power. And these paradigms were completely different. Now the paradigms are very generous, very interesting, very motivated and the way that we need this new society is also very positive. The paradigms today are freedom, democracy, liberty, creativity, innovation, competition, globalization, human rights, environment, etc. And these paradigms will change the societies.
So when you think about Mexico, of course you grew up there, you're the most prominent businessman in America, literally, in all of America. How will Mexico change? US citizens who go to Mexico love the culture. They see the wealth, they see the poverty, they see the difference in things. They see the drug issues, the police issues, and so forth. Give us a sense of how Mexico will evolve. And you're doing a lot to change it.
I think in this new society it's very easy to produce goods, to produce services very efficiently, very low cost, and produce wealth. But if you don't make the right conduction, the changes create crisis. And that's what we are living. And that's what, if we don't make a right conduction of the changes, we will have a lot of crisis. In the industrial society, we have civil wars, we have 2 world wars, and many problems. A lot of experiments with society in the 20th century, experiments, social experiments, political experiments, economic experiments, because they don't know how to manage the changes. For me, it's clear that to fight poverty is not with charity, is not with social programs. You need to give nutrition from the mother pregnant, nutrition for the child and for the student, health and employment. But health and education, excuse me. You need to bring high quality education, all grades of education. That's why I was talking before of digital culture. You need to have a modern and high quality education and jobs. As you have a higher education, you have more diversity of jobs. You can find jobs more easier than if you only know how to do one thing. I think the way for Mexico and all our countries is to take out people from poverty. The best investment is to take people out of, I am not talking only about social issues or ethical issues or moral issues. It's an economic need to take out people of poverty, to create middle classes, to take them to modernity, to take them to the market, and as much as you can include in the market and in the society 40 million people in our country that are marginal of that, or like China is doing with 800 million still in marginal, putting 30 or 40 million every year in the modernity. That's what you need to change. That's why we need to change. And we need to have an economic environment, economic climate for investment. And because with this investment, you will have economic activity and employment. We need to develop employment. And what are we doing? Well, we are trying to work in a combination with the foundation and investing in profit and non-profit companies. In profit companies, we are doing our job, regular job. That means some employment and some effects. But others increase productivity. Let's say mobile telephony make higher the productivity of our people, no? But the broadband and digital culture will improve the education and modernize. But also look the way to increase employment. And to increase employment, you need to begin to be creative, to have creativity, take out inertia. Inertia drive most of the decisions, but you need to move, like you do that in Google, to change that. And the only environment that you need for that is a stable financial stability, macro stability, and to push the activity where employment is. And employment is mainly in construction, housing, infrastructure, small business, micro business, middle business, that need to be financed and pushed.
And you actually have a view, I think, that businesses should do this ahead of the politicians, because businesses have a longer term view.
I think that in the past, in this agricultural society, let's say politicians or governments were everything, or feudal persons were everything. I think communism was a formula for an agricultural society, not for a modern society. Sure. No? And now, as the society advances, between the paradigms, freedom, creativity, you need more activity of the civil society. Every time the government will give more space to the society to do the solutions and to do the things. And I believe that entrepreneurs and many other people in other activities can think in long term and find solutions and go in the way for long-term solutions and not short-term.
Let's see if we can get some questions from the audience. The problem I have with your vision, which I agree with, is we've just spent the last 5 days going through an extraordinary financial restructuring. And there's an article today in the paper that's saying that banks are so scared of each other that they've stopped lending to each other and that there's a worldwide credit crisis about to happen. Now, you've been through a couple of these in Latin America where you cleverly maneuvered through tremendous challenges to build Telmex. What do you think is going to happen to the credit markets, to the United States? I mean, a lot of people are very, very concerned about what's happening.
I believe that economic cycles, you say cycles, are okay in a agricultural society when you have good weather and bad weather.
Okay.
But when you are talking about services societies, there is not quite to have cycles. And what makes cycles occur is that people personally have problems, and like a society also, of euphoria and pessimistic, no? Optimistic and pessimistic. You have times, in one day you have this kind of changes. But the society like a whole have also this kind. And I think we will have a few years of euphoria and madness, thinking that everything will grow in prices because prognosis is very usual, inertia is very in our minds always. If it went up 5 years, it will go forever, or if they are going, etc. And I think in this madness, people in charge of the financial system were looking for size, for fees, for businesses, for volume, bigger and bigger and bigger. Bigger was they think was the better, and not to make the best job, no, the efficiency.
So do you think the current credit crisis will actually affect the markets that you and I have been talking about?
Yes, they will affect everything, and they will be worse than now, I think. I will like to be equivocado, that I am wrong, but I think things will get a little worse, and because we were talking about the subprime in mortgage, but they are subprime everywhere. Subprime for acquisitions, subprime for derivatives, subprime for commodities, and we are just talking about mortgages until a few. Today now they are getting with the real thing, no? But what is important is not if it will be worse or better. It will have some time. The important thing is to get back from this situation in a better shape, strongly, and to try to avoid all these problems. And I think there are many solutions, easy but very costly. No? I used to say for 20 years to now that in the developed countries, the crises are paid by the savers. In our countries, it's paid by the consumers. That's good always that the savers pay the crisis than the consumers, because when that's the consumer, it's a big social problem. I think it should be taken out the speculation, but there's a bubble of speculative in oil and food, because you can buy contracts and commodities with 5% only. You need to increase the margin for that to avoid the speculation, mainly in oil and food. But also, one of the reasons is the weakness of the dollar. There are a big deficit, the weakness of the dollar. And I think the solution, they are doing, I think, a good job, but it will be more problems in the future. A good job because they have a low interest rate, negative interest rate, that in the past helped to revaluate assets. Lower interest rates, revaluate assets. The worst thing that they can do is to increase the interest rate like in 81. You remember in 81 it went to 21, the prime rate was 21%, that was crazy. I think with a low and negative interest rate for a while, making stronger the dollar and looking that oil and food and other commodities fall down more to avoid a recession with inflation, and especially for social issues, and the interest rate down and the spread of the banks. The problem is a crisis of the financial system. Mm-hmm. And the way that they can go out is with a spread between what is the active and the passive. No, they can have 5%, 4% spread of 6%. It's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. If you are paying 1.5% or 2%, and you are collecting 6 or 8 or 10 or 12, You can correct that in 2 years.
The reason I'm asking about the financial crisis is because people in the United States have a stereotype of Latin America financial crises. And now it seems like we're having a financial crisis. I wonder what the Latin Americans think about our financial crisis, right?
Well, I told you before that you solve your problems with the savers. That's with low interest rates, with negative interest rates. And the Monetary Fund and other institutions press Latin America to be paid by the consumers.
That's right.
And that's great crisis, no? Consumption get down 15%, like Argentina a few years ago, Mexico in 95. And here is pay, and I think it's a better social issue to be paid by savers than by consumers.
So your view, and you operate in all of Latin American countries, is that the growth rate will continue.
The what?
You believe that the growth rate in Latin America will continue?
Oh, I think we will have problems worldwide.
Well, but as you know, 20 years ago, we had bad leadership in Latin America, a number of dictators, a number of very, very bad acts by states. And the surprise in the last 10 years has been the robustness of Latin American economies, and in fact, their ability to pay back the loans that they got, which they fought so hard for 10 years earlier. Ultimately, does Latin America get to be as strong as the United States? Is that possible, given the resources and the population? The growth rates are higher?
I think that if the Western world, US and Europe has troubles, crisis like we have, like we are looking around, it will be a problem for worldwide. You cannot be an island in this world problem. Maybe China. China has a strong position to move and grow less. They will not grow 12% more for a few years, but they can grow 6, 8%, I don't know what, because they can turn back and look for the internal market. Until now, they grow with your market and with the Europe and with the world market, no? And then now they can turn and accelerate the process of integrating more faster the part of his population. But when you have a recession like this, everyone will decrease the growing. The important thing is that it's not costly for socially like other crises in the past. We have this experience, and I think there are tools to avoid to have this costly situation.
So to finish up and try to understand what your next steps are, Telmex, for example, and holding companies that you are associated with are actually thinking about expanding past Latin America, really becoming international telephone operators and telephony in business. Do you see Telmex as really a global company going forward?
Well, these things were looking 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that maybe a little more things were getting in a not a good way. And we believe a healthy companies. What we do is to try to have a healthy position. And the view of the group that actually we have solved some companies in the last 2 years or 3 years because we were looking that something were going to happen like it is happening now. And what we have is a healthy position. We know there are a crisis. It will be a difficult, a tough crisis. Nobody knows how deep, how important, how long. But our position is to be financially healthy, very healthy. And we still are buying back. We have a politics of dividends conservative to have a stronger position. And we will view. We don't know. We don't know what will happen. But what is clear is that we are looking to have a healthy financial position to follow investing. And one of the things we do in the group, we have a philosophy of some points, is to maintain a austerity in good times to avoid layouts in bad times.
So the other thing that you're doing is you're using your personal wealth for good, for investments. You recently invested, for example, in the New York Times in a minority position. You have many things that you're doing personally. Can you talk a little bit about, for example, your philanthropic interests, and where do you think your personal impact will be felt. I read, for example, that you've committed up to $7 billion of philanthropic work and good works and investments in the world, which is an extraordinary commitment.
We're focusing in Latin America, Mexico and Latin America. We have some experience already doing some jobs like Mexico downtown, that I was in charge of that, coordinate the efforts, and it works very well. And I think the combination of non-profit organizations like the foundations and profit business can work together in some areas. Sometimes it's only the non-profit, let's say for health and education, it mainly is non-profit, but also you can develop profit companies to support the activity and move in the same direction. Let's say if you are talking about infrastructure, you need someone that say, I will invest on that. No? Let's say Central America has 70% of his energy in thermoelectric, but when they have a lot of water, but they don't go hydroelectric because they don't have the investment and the money to make the investment. I think we need to change that to 70% hydroelectric and 30% thermoelectric when they have so much water to use for this kind of power that is recyclable. No? Entonces, if the others don't invest, we are investing already there and proposing investment there. And in this way, you have these profit companies. But also, when you are talking about health, well, but one way you go non-profit with programs of non-profit, or sports or culture, you go non-profit. But sometimes we combine that.
So my sense, and I want to thank you for coming and spending time at Zeitgeist, is that Carlos is a person who I think exemplifies what you can do as an individual when you want to have an impact on the world, both in terms of the impact that you've been able to achieve, just in terms of bringing people up with communications and so forth and building a great business in the meantime, and now continuing that set of principles and really having an impact on a much, much broader stage. So thank you very much for coming. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.